You're listening to the Modern Healthcare Back Office, a podcast dedicated to solving the billing issues and gridlock facing the healthcare industry, presented by ProChant, hosted by Chuck Ellis and Rachel Schools.
Well, hey there, folks. Chuck here, and welcome to another edition of the Modern Healthcare Back Office. I am joined by my amazing co-host, Ms. Rachel Schools. How you doing, Rachel?
I am amazing. Thank you. How are you?
I am also doing amazing. I am excited for spring. We're going to be doing a little traveling over spring break, going up to Tennessee to visit my brother and his wife and go to Dollywood with my 5-year-old. She is so excited to go to a theme park.
Oh, that'll be
Really, for the
fun.
first time as a child. She went there as a toddler and she doesn't really remember it,
It's going to be
but
fun.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So we're looking forward to that. But yeah, how are things going in your world?
Wonderful. I was actually supposed to go camping this weekend in the Brunswick area, but that didn't pan out. So,
Oh, bummer.
bummer.
Yeah. Well,
It'll be all right.
good news is there's always other times to go camping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looked cold
So
anyway when I checked it out. So,
yeah, it's gonna be cold when we're in Tennessee. So we're like, do we have enough cold clothes for our Florida-based children who don't really go out much because or don't go out in the cold much because there isn't much cold to go out in. Anyway, we're gonna figure that out. And one of the things that we're also working on figuring out is there was an article recently in Bank Info Security, and it was talking about how healthcare is the most hit by ransomware, or at least that was the case in 2022, according to the FBI. And this really struck a chord for us over here at ProChink, because one of the things that we're really big on is cybersecurity. And it's one of the reasons why we go through a very rigorous process called high trust certification that's very involved and it is very complicated. And sometimes it makes our jobs a little harder because it's so secure that all of our stuff has to flow through various different checkpoints and filters. But it's one of the ways that we work to limit the risk for our clients. But this is ransomware in general is just kind of a massive problem that has happened for businesses everywhere. And healthcare has been hit especially hard. Rachel, you really kind of had a lot to say on this. So we wanted to have this special recording and talk about the effects of ransomware in healthcare and what our listeners can do to protect themselves.
so before we go there, Chuck, take me on a tour. What would it look like? What would it look like for a facility that was a facility, an organization, a being that was victim of some sort of a ransomware attack?
Well, usually what happens in a ransomware attack is clicks on something they shouldn't, and it allows a program to get into their system, which then spreads to their servers and basically locks them out of access to their data, their information, the tools that they use to do their daily job until they pay a ransom.
Mhm.
And the people that do this are usually pretty savvy. They've got different tiers of stuff for individuals or for businesses, and they try to go after the biggest possible return. And they know they've been doing this so much that they know more or less what to charge you that's big enough that they'll make a big profit, but not so big that you might be tempted to go to the authorities or try to circumvent that ransomware. And it's become a real problem, like I said, for a lot of businesses because you've got to do your job. So for many, it's almost become the cost of doing business for some companies where they get victim to attack after attack and they can't bring everything to
Yeah.
a halt because they got uh, clients to take care of. And if you're in healthcare, people's lives depend on your ability to be able to access your data. So the stakes are considerably higher in healthcare.
And your ability to
So
protect that data, right?
exactly,
So
exactly.
I have a story, right? My other mother, I won't say any facility names here or anything, but my other mother, she lives in Las Vegas and she runs from an operational perspective, one of the largest hospitals in Las Vegas. And they were actually attacked by ransomware at the beginning of the pandemic. Thank goodness in her old school ways because they were not completely shut down, right? They were able to continue to operate on paper and continue taking care of lives, but it was a major disruption to everything that everyone had become accustomed to at work
Sure,
for the
sure.
time this was going on because that's essentially what happened, right? They got in their system. It was held hostage, for lack of a better term. And then they had to work through that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. It is literally taking your ability to do your job hostage, and because of that, it makes it easier for them to command higher prices for the ransomware. In fact, the thing that the statistic I read was that the average payment is about $233,000 for a ransomware attack. And now that's going to vary wildly because, like I said, if it's an individual person, it might be as little as a few $100, and if it's a big company, they can be hit for 7, 8 figures even. And healthcare, you pretty much be safe to say that you're going to be hit with an above average ransomware because they know how much revenue flows in and out of your business, whether you're profitable or not. They know there's enough flow through and there's enough urgency that you'll be tempted to pay what it takes to make the problem go away.
So if they're able to get into your system, right? Let's just say that they're able to get into your system. Ooh, why is that such a big deal? What kind of data are they getting their hands on?
Well, yeah, because not
Wow.
only are they getting their hands on your personal data, but they're getting their hands on all of your clients' personal data, all your patients' personal data. Massive HIPAA violation. And that can have blowback on you as well, because you can be left holding the bag for a HIPAA violation for lack of keeping patients' data secure.
Mhm.
And so that's a very big concern for folks in the healthcare industry as well. And yeah, it can be devastating for a company beyond just the financial process. And it's interesting. One of the questions that I know people ask with ransomware, and I heard a podcast episode about this, and they talked about, well, what if if you pay the money, do they give you back access to your actual data? And the answer is usually yes, and that's because they actually have reputations. These cyber pirates, if for lack of a better term, have reputations to maintain. And if it gets out there in the underworld that they're the ones that are taking data and not returning it, or taking access and not returning it, that actually hurts them. And the cybersecurity experts who follow them will know if they go for a big company and they rip somebody off, and another big company hires a cybersecurity expert who has been listening to all of the nether reaches of the dark web and knows that this is the particular pirate that is known for not giving back the data, then that client won't pay because they don't think that they're going to get their data back anyway. Now, even if you do get your data back, guess
They've
what?
got
They
it.
probably still have they still have it. They're not erasing it off their hard
Yeah.
drives. They're keeping all of that information, and that includes all your trade secrets, that includes all the patient information, social security numbers, all of that stuff. And so it's basically them getting paid to get a treasure trove of identity theft opportunities.
Boy.
Which, yeah. So,
So what can we do? What do we do, Chuck? What's our defense
well,
here?
the best thing I think is a good
Mhm.
offense. And I heard that from a very wise person named Rachel Schools, I believe. So, Rachel, there are a lot of different things that you can do. The article that we were reading recommends regularly backing up your equipment, backing up your database to offline sources, because if you've got it regularly backed up and it's offline, if they block off all of that stuff, guess what? You can
Bring
say,
it back online. Yeah.
you can bring it back online through a separate channel, and you're out just the equipment that's locked
So I'm
down.
just thinking through
Uh,
that, right? Because let's talk
right.
about our average organization here. We're not talking about just one
Sure.
system, right?
Exactly.
If you think about it on a day-to-day basis at your organization, just if you had to guess, how many different systems and places are we storing this type of data?
Oh, dozens, I'm
Yeah,
sure, on in just one
yeah,
company.
in just one company.
So,
So you're right. Like the backup is important, but everything, right? Because once
sure.
they sort of lock you out, um,
Hmm.
it's everything, right? Could be.
Yeah, because it could be every computer that's on a network. So
Yep.
even if it's a computer that has the information just saved on it and it's still functioning, guess what? If it was connected to that network, it's vulnerable.
Hmm.
And that's one thing that you can do. However, cautioning along with that, that still means they got your data. That still means that you have been tricked into a massive, potentially devastating amount of identity theft. And I can tell you from the amount of times that I've gotten notices of class action lawsuits from identity theft that can be very costly to an organization if they lose client or patient information that leads to potential identity theft.
So that kind
So,
of leads me, Chuck, to our next point that we want to talk about, which is minimizing your digital footprint. This
exactly.
one is big to me. I have worked in healthcare for most of my career. And anytime that you're working in healthcare, you're going to get on your computer, but your computer is really not where any patient protected health information is stored, right? You're typically going into some other software system where you're accessing that information. And this is why having a data driven organization or becoming a conscious data driven organization is so critical because you need to eh, treat your data with the utmost care, right? And we shouldn't be having to log into a system and download and export reports and kind of save those things to our desktops, right? Like we want to
Right.
reduce our digital footprint. So we want to rally around our data in such a way that we make it accessible to everybody needs it, right? We have to think about
Sure.
use, but we open up access to that data and give people enough freedom to explore it with the appropriate tools without them having to get that data out of the secure system where it lives and onto a personal computer. So, minimizing your digital footprint just means, hey guys, if you work in healthcare, keep that footprint to a minimum. Try not to be exporting data, saving data, anything like that on your personal computer.
Yeah, that is a big one too, because a lot of times the vulnerability that comes from a cyber attack like this is usually something that is instigated by somebody on the team who gets an email that looks suspicious and clicks on it, and it's all over after. And that's how they get in. Like you really almost have to. Most of the time, it's not coming from them hacking your back end or whatever. It's coming from somebody
Somebody.
clicking something in your office that wasn't supposed to, and that's where I think the good offense part of this comes in, right, Rachel?
And let there not be anything there. So not only do we not have random files saved outside of other systems that are locked down, but also want to make sure we don't have a spreadsheet with all of your passwords and a list of every website, right? So
Yep.
like if they're gonna get it, right? If they're gonna get our stuff, let's be super like let's be cognizant and be on the offense and not give them too
Mm,
much, right? Two-factor authentication is another thing, right? So,
that's a very big thing.
mhm.
Yeah.
And actually, I think in this industry, I can't think of much that has to do with healthcare where you're not having to do that sort of two-factor authentication
Mm,
anymore. But then again, keep in mind, it's one thing to have it protected like that. So if somebody did take over our system, they wouldn't be able to get into those things, but don't take it out either.
yeah. And another important thing to remember is especially if you're using a mobile device for two factor authentication, when the time comes that you upgrade your mobile device, make sure that you switch the two factor authentications that you have connected to that device over while you still have it with you. Because I can't tell you how many headaches I've had from going, oh, I need to change my two factor authentication. Shoot, I turned that phone in and traded it in for another thing. And you usually have to contact their webmaster or whoever's running their cybersecurity, prove it's who you say you are, and it's a whole thing. So think really smart too before you upgrade your devices or before you change anything like that. A good two-factor authentication. I really like the text message type of two-factor authentication because that will work on whatever phone you have. But there are some tools out there that will be linked directly to your device, especially if you're using a Google suite of tools. Google likes to use, especially if you've got an Android phone, they'll just ping your Android phone and be like, "Hey, is this you?" And you can click yes, and that can be a problem if switch devices. But the other thing too, like when it goes on offensive, like training is a huge thing for cybersecurity. And that's one of the things that, we have not just training as we come on as employees, but we have to have regular
Ongoing.
updated
Mhm.
training that updates as cyber tech changes and security threats change, that we have to do a couple of times a year to make sure that we maintain our high trust certification. But big thing with educating your team too is really like be very, very careful what you click on, and very, if anything seems even a little bit off. Like we've had attempted cyber attacks before that have come from text messages that look like they're from a team member,
Mhm.
and it's somebody spoofing a number and pretending to be a team member, and you go, "Oh, is," and Rachel, you actually made me aware of one once when I was like, "Oh, so and so is texting me," and you were like, "That's not so and so."
Yeah, so that's just it, right? So I think what you're
Yeah.
hitting at here is stay vigilant against these
Oh
cyber
yeah.
threats. So we've got our offense in place, right? We know how
Sure.
to minimize our digital footprint, but your point is this is part of being data conscious, right? Make sure that
Sure.
everybody in your organization is aware of these things that might be coming at them, how to spot them. Here's another thing you can do. You can do a regular vulnerability assessment, right? What
Hmm.
I mean by that is your IT department. It's like you mentioned, Chuck, most of the time when these attacks happen, it's not your IT, like our IT department's on top of it, right? Nobody's getting
Sure.
past that. But like you said, it
Hmm.
actually comes from people within your organization that are clicking on things.
Yeah.
So keeping them on their toes regularly is the best way to remain vigilant there. But we do regular vulnerability assessments, and if you fall
Sure.
victim and you get tricked into clicking on one of those things in that test, right, buddy, right away, you get called to the office, right?
Yep.
And somebody's gonna let you know that was silly, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and that's a good thing. Talk to your head of IT about instituting those kind of regular checks as well. And believe me, the negative reinforcement, whatever you choose, is going to be a significant way to reduce that kind of risk. Another important thing to think about is think about your third party partners when you go to either outsource stuff. I mean, like full disclosure, we're in outsourcing service, and that we provide a lot of back office processing, automation, and revenue cycle management for companies. And when you do that, you're also trusting these other companies that could also be vulnerable to with all of your precious data and even patient data. So, Rachel, there's a lot of ways that you can uh, make sure to check who you partner
pick
with,
your
and
vendor carefully.
exactly pick your vendor very
Do
carefully.
your homework, right? Make sure that they
Hmm.
are certified, right? HIPAA certified, high trust
High
certified.
trust certified. That's the best in the
High
business.
trust is the best in the business.
Hmm.
We've got that one, right? So it's you want to make sure that you really, really do your research. Only are you protecting your patients, right? The last thing that a sick patient needs is for their data to be stolen and for somebody to go open thousands of credit cards in their account, thousands, listen to me, open credit cards and run up thousands of dollars in charges
Sure,
or
sure.
whatever. So it's a big deal.
Exactly. And like you said, the follow-up and asking the important questions, because there's being high trust certified, and then there's knowing that your partners are not outsourcing
Yep.
themselves some of the processes,
Yep.
because they could be outsourcing to somebody who is not high trust certified, and you're not even aware of it because they don't disclose that, or they say, oh well, we use these other third party vendors, and they just hope that nobody asks who they're using. And that's one of the benefits of a company like ours that is wholly owned, where every single process that we do is done with a ProChant
Mhm.
employee, is done on a ProChant owned device. So all of the data is controlled wholly by our system, which is high trust certified to the highest degree possible, to make sure that if you're partnering with us, you don't have to worry about a cyber threat, because we are following the absolute bleeding edge when it comes to
That's
cybersecurity.
right.
And if you're going to partner with somebody, and we hope that's us, but if it's not us, be sure to ask those questions. Ask, okay, well, you seem like you're a really good price compared to these other people. Why is that so? Is your team wholly owned? Are they outsourcing to a third party to handle some of their own processes? Ask those questions. That's another great way to lower your risk and make sure you're cyber safe.
That's right.
So, well, very cool. Well, Rachel, it has been a delight chatting with you as always. And this is a very important topic. So I'm sure there's going to be folks with questions. Where can they reach you if they have more questions about cybersecurity for their company?
Rachel S. at prochant.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Rachel Schools.
Absolutely. And you can find me on LinkedIn at Chuck Ellis, or you can email me if you got questions about this show or want to be a guest at chuckellis@prochant.com.
Please come be a guest.
Yeah, we're looking for guests to be on the show in 2023, and we are taking registrations of interest. You can go on prochant.com and click on the podcast link at the top of our page, and you'll actually see a little form that you can fill out if you're interested in being a guest. So thank you again so much for everybody listening and making it to the end of the show. We really appreciate you being here. Be sure to like, share, subscribe if you're on YouTube, and if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, rate us 5 stars, please. It will really help spread the good word about the show. But thank you again so much for joining us. On behalf of myself, Rachel, and the rest of the ProChant team, we will see you in the next one. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Modern Healthcare Back Office, a presentation of ProChant, a wholly owned revenue cycle management service dedicated to serving HME, pharmacy, infusion, and other healthcare providers. Learn more about us at prochant.com.